fierce coach of middlebury Browns, high-tech coaching. We know her. Melanie Curtis has jumped out of an airplane 11,000 times. She has led free fall world records, starred stunted doubles in commercials, won many competitive medals, and has built a large and loyal following in coaching and creating community in the sport of skydiving, and growing forward into life coaching and entrepreneurship. She founded her own company, How to Fly. She traveled the world challenging the model of global entrepreneurship, and now helps type A people, I don't know if you know any of those, and the feelings that come with it, across widely varied life challenges and business pursuits. Melanie is exceptionally talented at relating the bigger concepts of identifying fear and clarifying values to the specific situations high achievers and particular groups face. She has been featured in Fast Companies, spoken at conferences, companies, and on podcasts, including Success IQ, Elevate, and more. With her unique energy and humor, Melanie connects with groups just as powerfully as she does in an intimate one-on-one coaching relationship. Other than family flying and keeping it completely real, comedy and New Yorker to of Mel's great loves in life. And we know her. So thank you all for coming.
Thank you all for being here. I'm honored that you took time out of your days to show up. So the first thing I want to share with you guys is a video of one of my first ever stunt jobs as a skydiver, which is not actually the main way I would work as a professional skydiver, but this is one of the jobs that I did and one of my most favorite. So check it out. Pretty ridiculous. I thought, what better than to start with a little comedy, lighten the mood, scare you guys a little bit. But the premise of tonight's talk was around this idea of living life to the fullest. And that means different things to each of us, right? Like obviously jumping out of airplanes is part of the way I live life to the fullest, right? I air quote it because, like, well, what does that mean? You know, what is that to each of us? So I put this question to you before we even start so that you can think about it and go, well, okay, what does it mean to me? Like, yeah, we're talking about skydiving, and okay, that's for her, but, you know, what is part of that for me? You know, so obviously it's jumping out of airplanes, courage, creativity, family, relationships. Those things matter to me. Art. What are some things that matter to you guys? What's something you would put in that category? Camping. Camping. Love it. Love it. Meaningful connected relationships. Awesome.
I would say just being.
Being. Presence.
I mean, that's living fullest, making the most of every single second of that.
Very cool. Thank you.
Yeah, like sometimes I try to take the phone down rather than looking through the lens and taking a picture. I try to not see it through the camera, just be present. So I agree, just enjoying the moment.
Yeah, thanks. Love that. When I miss a picture, I often say, oh, I lived it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'm like, okay, I can relax. It's okay that I missed the photo. Yeah, anything else?
Having fun.
Having fun? Cool, cool. I love that. So, anyone else want to share? You don't have to. What?
Dying with no regrets.
Dying with no regrets? I would love that defined. That's a powerful question. Seriously. Yeah, no, I mean it. It's good. Good stuff. Good things to consider. And I like that. Part of our, I would guess, living life to the fullest involves our career, right? So my career trajectory started at an investment bank. Surprising. Surprising, no one does that. Classic path. And interestingly, I was applying to jobs in New York, and I was more drawn to creative pursuits. Like I applied at a bunch of advertising firms and was called more toward the creative end, but I realized pretty quickly that they paid like nothing, really nothing, and I thought, how can I afford to live in New York City on this salary and stuff like that? And so I ended up getting an interview at DLJ and liked the people that I interviewed with, and I was an economics major, and I was like, well, okay, so I went that route. So anyway, DLJ ended up getting purchased by CSFB. I don't know if you know that, but that's just a tidbit. So I'm working in this investment bank, and I'm starting to skydive. I've already started skydiving at this point in my life, living in New York City, and liking the job, you know, making okay money, and very long story short, I was getting to the point where I couldn't really skydive enough in New York that I didn't have a car. I mean, you can have a car in New York as a 20-something with their first job. I definitely couldn't. And I ended up, there was a person who worked in my office who caught wind that I was almost going to quit. I was almost like going to quit my job without a job and go just so I could move to like Southern California to be in a place where there was sunshine. And, you know, a place where I could skydive more easily. And so anyway, he effectively, luckily, his assistant went on maternity leave, and he effectively poached me from these younger brokers. I started working with him, and we ended up moving to Los Angeles. At the same time, I ended up basically doubling my salary because we just had a much more mature business, highly transactional, lots of clients, yada, yada, yada. So then I'm in Southern California, I can have a car, I start going to the drop zone every single weekend. You know, working market hours, East Coast market hours. Friday I get in the car and I try to beat traffic and I go and I jump all weekend. So that's happening. Spending all this money on skydiving, I'm getting good, I'm getting coaching, I'm paying for gear, I'm doing wind tunnel time, which is the iFly stuff. And my team achieves the highest honor, like we win the gold medal of the amateur class, which is awesome. Like, yay, go us. It was an amazing moment, my skydiver, yay. But at the same time, so that moment made me go, okay, what's next? Yeah, it started making me question things. But at the same time, I also was starting to become this person at work that I really didn't like. Like I was clearly showing signs of unhappiness, and I was snapping at people. I was, you know, just not wanting to go Sunday night, dreading it, like the classic signs of just like, this isn't for me anymore. So with that, I said, all right, well, there's this milestone in skydiving, and, you know, what do I do? What's next? I don't know. I started to consider that. And I bought the job search book. What color is your parachute? Right? Yeah, okay, classic. Clearly, I bought it because it had parachute in the title. Like, no joke, complete one-track mind. This is no joke. So, because I didn't know what to do, I was like entertaining all avenues. I even started studying for the GMAT. I'm like, maybe I'll go the MBA route. I don't know, you know, maybe that'll be good and I won't be as unhappy that way. So I'm reading this book, What Color Is Your Parachute? And I love that you laughed at that because you knew immediately. And a question in that book changed my life. And that question is, what would you do if money were no object? And so I answered that question immediately. I was like, well, skydiving, duh, of course, but I don't want to live in a trailer on the drop zone. I don't want to eat ramen noodles for my food. I don't want to make $35 for a skydive and hope it's sunny so I can pay my rent, you know? I just knew that that wasn't the lifestyle that I wanted, and that was what I believed professional skydiving to be. And so, because that answer to me, when I answered that question, because the answer was so immediate, it was so obvious to me, duh, skydiving. I started to go, well, wait a second, and my view was like, just started to slightly open up, and I was like, well, wait, there are professional skydivers that exist that have homes and families, and okay, like it just basically started, my mind started to open to the possibility that I could be a professional skydiver, which in my starting view was very limited. And so that's the first thing that sticks out in my story is that the mindset was critical. Like that mindset shift, turning into, like changing into something that originally or at first was absolutely in no way possible, that I immediately blocked it. Well, skydiving, duh, but this, blocked from those possibilities. So once I was able to connect to a mindset that made it something that I wanted, that included more of what I cared about, that felt to me more like living life to the fullest, whether I was aware of that or not, in my young mind, right? That basically allowed me to pursue this idea of professional skydiving. And so that's what I did. I ended up calling the Drop Zone owners, where I was a newly burgeoning sponsored athlete, and we basically talked and developed this role where I would be the events and marketing person of the experience side of their business, which didn't really exist in skydiving up until that point, which is pretty cool. Part of that job included running events like doing this, dressing up in costume with your best friends, and helping people have fun, you know, facilitating fun, doing big, highly skilled, bigger events like this with other people in the community, doing different styles of flying. If you're curious, this is me right here. That matters, I find that interesting. But yeah, doing different kinds of skydives like this, doing different kinds of demonstration jumps for different types of things. This is for the Fantastic Four movie, where we jumped into Charlotte Motor Speedway. It's just one of the unique type of jobs that you would get when you have a higher level of skill. This is the biggest event that we would run at the drop zone that I worked for. And so just all of this is just kind of giving you a picture of what that role looked like working at Skydive Elsinore, doing their events and being that professional skydiver. And so as a professional skydiver, new and growing into that role, you get sponsors and you get to take cool pictures where your hair blows up at the perfect right moment.
Where is that?
It's over Lake Elsinore, which is in Southern California, which is where I worked.
Okay.
Yeah. And so you get to do this, and then you also get your mom making fun of you, which is amazing. Bringing you back down, always. So what's sticking out to you guys so far? What's coming up for you when I'm sharing my story? Anything no need to share, but if you want to, I'm
Very
happy to.
cool life. It's like a magazine life, star. I don't know. I see a lot of fun happening there.
Definitely a lot of fun, which is a high value for me. And so again, thinking about the question of living life to the fullest, like I've always valued fun. I actually believe fun and excellence are not mutually exclusive. In fact, I believe fun magnifies success. That's a different talk, but it's definitely something that I speak to often. So thank you, Irina, for that. Anything anyone else is sort of noticing about their own stuff? Sorry, my hair.
I think it's very inspiring for me personally, because I want to share my story, and I feel the energy with which the things are coming out of you, and that is very resonates with me and inspires me.
A lot of love.
Yeah.
A lot of love. And that's the thing. People ask about that a lot, and they're like, well, how, you know, the how question, which is a good question, right? And it's interesting because it's very clear to me, looking back, that why I was successful, I wasn't ever really caring about sponsorship or being a freaking cool kid, none of that. Like, and this is interesting how I rose as a leader in the sport, is that it's because of that purity of love and joy for what I was doing, which is definitely a prevailing thought, which is a good transition to the next part of my story. Thank you, Rhonda. So, anything else before I go on?
I think for me, similarly, like you started asking life to the fullest and presenting some problems, and then the mindset. For me, I thought about what I like, and I love to write, but that's never something that I thought to do as professionally, because the mindset that I'm not going to make money.
Which part of your story?
Yeah, my story.
Which, are you talking about something specific? You don't have to share if you don't want to.
No, about writing.
Writing.
Yeah,
Okay, I'm sorry. Yeah, gotcha. I missed that. Go ahead.
Yeah, I love writing, but I never thought that I could do it because who's going to say, who's going to read, or, you know, how can you do a professional writing for that? And I don't know, it just inspires me because that's the clip that I needed to
Do this. And I'm serious. I'm totally serious. I don't make this funny sound as a joke. I mean it like, I wonder, what am I maybe not seeing in terms of being a professional writer? What other avenues in this day and age, internet, yada yada, copywriting, who knows what, blogging, ads, who knows, again, I'm just spitballing literally from nothing. I don't really know the answer. But meaning like, I love that for you. I'm excited for you to do some exploring. Yeah. Anyone else? Awesome. Thank you for sharing, you guys. Very cool. So the next part of my story, so my story continues in that I did love this life. I loved it so freaking much. I was joyful doing this work. And that's absolutely, as I said already, how and why I became a notable professional and known around the world at all, was because of that pure energy and hard work, of course. It's not all easy. Oh, you just gotta love it, but just blink. No. Like, of course, the hard work is implied. The training, the multiple jumps a day, the like getting up really early, the yada yada, all that stuff is inside the story also. So the next part is, it's funny because every time I think of this moment in my story career trajectory, it's like I remember it like I was there. So I'm loving my life, loving this. I'm working at this drop zone in Southern California. And one day I'm walking across the drop zone, and I walk across the gravel driveway, and I'm heading down to the experience area, and it was a foreshadowing moment where my intuition spoke to me, where I heard this, and I stopped and I really listened to it. And the foreshadowing moment was, okay, I just have this sense that if this is all that I do, I know I'm not going to be happy. I'm happy now. I know I'm loving this, but I know that if it's all I do, something inside me knew that if that was all that I did, I wouldn't be happy X number of years down the road, being this professional skydiving person. So luckily, I was at a place where I still was pretty happy doing what I was doing, and I had some space, and I'm glad and lucky and grateful that I listened to my own intuition and that message I got, because I was like, well, what would I do if I didn't do this? Effectively, I was essentially living my dream, living the dream, something I wouldn't have ever thought of to begin with, by the way. You know what I mean? And so I was like, well, what do I like? What am I good at? What would I do? So I started brainstorming, and on my old iPhone, I wrote this long list of ideas, of things that I might do, and I wrote this description that is pretty much the description of a life coach without knowing what a life coach was. I had no clue I had no idea what life coaches were or did existed or anything at that time. So I write this description, it's like, I don't know, like, talk to people on the phone and be a friend, but not, like, right? And obviously that's not what a life coach really is, but it's sort of, you know. So I continue my research, and I learn that life coaches are a thing, that life coaching is a thing. And I'm like, what? Life coaching? Ugh, no, that is stupid. I literally thought it was a complete scam. I was like, no way, life coaching? No. Seriously, I completely rejected it. I was like, that is the stupidest thing. It's clearly a scam. It's obviously BS. I don't know if any of you got that experience learning about it, but I did. So I'm like, life coaching, okay, it's either 100% a scam, total BS, or it's part of my calling. And I was like, ugh, well, if it's there's even a chance that it's a part of my calling, I better at least figure out if this is a real thing. So it just, again, that sort of like a little bit of a nudge kept me going, well, don't close the door on this thing just yet, because it might be real. Again, this is bullshit, pardon my French, this is BS, this is a scam, right? So I did some more research, and I found, wow, it seems like it's a real thing. And I found a school that I really liked, and the language on the website really resonated with me, which, by the way, I probably wouldn't have said the word resonate back then. Just saying. Okay. And I still couldn't quite get over. I was still just kind of locked and unable to take action on this piece, even though I really liked the school, and I was like, ugh. So luckily, in trying to figure this out, I found a friend of mine in skydiving who had gone to this program. And I was like, oh, thank God. So I call her up, and I'm like, okay, please, like, talk to me. Is this real? And so she said, like, it's totally real, it's legit, it's one of the best things I've ever done, like, it's for real. And so I'm like, thank God, okay, it's real. And so now I'm that much closer to, like, actually doing this thing and, like, going for this school, which, by the way, was a lot of money that I didn't have. And even though I was, like, scared, a similar thing where every fiber of my being was like, this is the direction to go. And so I'd done a lot of prep and a lot of work to get me to the point where I actually could take the action forward. So yeah, I was scared, I was blocked, I was unsure before. And then I did all that work, I learned a lot, I got more information, I got all that I needed in order to get to that point where 2008, on my birthday, which is in January, by the way, I swiped my credit card for $8,000 I did not have, and went for it. And it was obviously, yes, truly one of the best decisions of my life, in that I started to build my life coaching business in conjunction with my professional skydiving career, which transitioned to me being a solo, like, free agent professional athlete, where I was then traveling around the world, being invited to events, to coach teams, to be sort of the headlining coach at various locations. So my skydiving career was growing as my young life coaching career was being built on the side. So we hear a lot about side hustle and entrepreneurship and, you know, whatnot. And so it's totally awesome to have other things going on. Like I tend to not advise, like, full 2 feet in. I advise there to be sort of a balanced approach. That really worked for me. That's why I say that. So I did all the traveling around the world, and all of this stuff, where my book comes in is that so much of it is about mindset. Like, so many of these choices I wouldn't have made had I not accessed what I first thought was not possible into being maybe, kind of, sort of, potentially possible, right? Not certainty, but those ideas are a big part of what allowed me to move forward in my career. So anything sticking out so far? Talk to me, guys. What are you getting from this? Anything? No worries if not? Yes?
I really enjoyed how it was just opening up. It's not because I'm a friend. I just love her story. Skydiver, all that stuff from investment banking. How you were open to exploring it. How you were facing your own fear of, okay, this is BS. I'm not going to even go there and get, okay, let me ask somebody. A lot of people just like shut off and not go for it.
Yeah, and thank you for saying that. I appreciate that. And it was a bunch of little things, a bunch of little actions that built into the bigger leaps, as it were, metaphorically.
My husband
Yeah.
did something similar. He was a software engineer. Fantastic career as a software engineer. He was a top engineer at the company he was working at. He was completely burned out. He was in therapy, was on Prozac. Went to get his hair cut at my hairdresser for one day, and sitting in the chair with her, and she started brainstorming with him different professions and things that he could possibly do. And he became a farrier. And a farrier is a person who shoes horses.
Yep.
So he's been a farrier for 15 years, but he's also my developer for building websites.
Yeah.
So again, you still have that double thing of something to fall back. I had this, I had my corporate job, and I had my business on the side, just to have something to fall back on.
Yeah.
Even though it was the same profession, but he has a similar story, and it was, again, when he started, is this possible? Can you make a living shooting horses?
Yeah.
In some countries, maybe not, but everything's possible.
Yeah.
And it's true. It's so true. Everything's possible here. And honestly, it's a matter of you making your opportunities. And, you know, you can pretty much make a living doing anything in this country if you know how to make opportunities for yourself.
Yeah.
And having positive attitude.
Yeah, proactive, definitely positive attitude, proactivity for sure, and it is. It's not reckless. That's the thing. I say this all the time.
No.
It's that, you know, being brave, and that's the next thing. A mindset that's really worked for me, big time, is being brave, of course. But being brave doesn't necessarily mean I'm reckless, right? When I was like, oh my God, professional skydiving is possible, I didn't just quit my job. I didn't be like, hey Peter, see ya, I'm out, right? I didn't do that. I worked for 8 months to develop a new role, to get my finances in order, to be able to leave a large salary for a much smaller one, you know? So yeah, like, being brave doesn't imply being reckless. And that's what's funny. I'm in my head a little bit, but if we think back to the commercial, where what's her name? She's kind of like reckless, risk reward, right? And so she's not really doing the deal, right? But it talks about risk reward ratios, right? And so she wanted her jacks so bad that it was worth it to take the risk. You know what I mean? But so circling back to you guys though, and this question of living life to the fullest and how do we do that, right? And the things. Lots of things can be extracted from my story, like positive attitude and proactivity and stuff like that. But the two things I want to highlight, the first is overcoming fear, which I say it like that because that goes back to the mindset stuff. Like, I can stand here and I can feel fear in my body because I'm thinking a certain thing, and then I can go, hold on, I'm thinking this thing that makes me freak out, I can reframe it, I can do the mindset work, I can employ those skills that I have around my mindset, and then I can diffuse my own fear as I stand here, right here, and I'm not doing anything, right? So that's one thing. That's That's one distinction, right? So I bring that up on purpose. Obviously we have her. Again, I said I was ahead. She was freaking out. Reckless. These are my nieces, by the way. They are so smoking me on the scared face. I mean, I'm like, come on, Curtis, get it together. So the next thing, the distinction is, the second thing is to employ courage, which is different than overcoming fear the way that I look at it. So the overcoming fear, again, I'm diffusing the fear, AKA doing the prep work that gives me the knowledge that has me feel less scared, standing right here doing nothing. And then the courage is that, like, was it still scary to go $8 grand? Yeah, it was. Was it still scary to leave the investment bank? Yes, it was. You know what I mean? But I did what I needed for my tolerance level, for my risk level, to be able to get to the point where I could employ courage and take an action, right? And so the first skydive, this is a picture when I was very young. This is actually my 4th skydive. This is my good friend Linda, who is my oldest friend in the world, her first skydive. But the skydive metaphor itself is pretty awesome in the sense that the action then can inform us of a new mindset, as in people who think about skydiving, and again, this is not about skydiving. Skydiving happens to be in my story, and it happens to be a useful metaphor. You know, it could be any kind of fear that you guys are looking to overcome, or something that you feel in your life that maybe you want more of that you're not doing, or when you do the inventory and you, like, what would I have to do to not have regrets? Like, what would that answer be? And you maybe don't have it in your life yet. Well, okay, what does it take to do that? Yada, 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 all those things, right? So for skydiving, a typical mindset for people is they say, I could never do that, right? I could never jump out of a perfectly good airplane. You heard that before? Right? It's a classic. Yeah, I could never jump out of a perfectly good airplane. And I get it. I totally get it. Skydiving is not for everyone. I don't recommend it for everyone. I recommend it for people who might want to. Those are the people that I think should do it. And everyone else, it's no big deal. Do something else. But I bring this up because I could never jump out of a perfectly good airplane. I could never do that. It has an implied second part, which is basically like I could never jump out of a perfectly good airplane and live, right? It's like this fear of death, essentially. It's too high. People don't tend to say it's a fear of heights because it's just way too high to gauge the height. So there's this idea, it's intense, I know, right? I could never jump out of a perfectly good airplane and live. So when I did my first jump, and I had the same thought, even though it was in my family, and skydiving was in my family, and I sat through the first jump course a million times as a young person, but I never was going to go until this day, right? So that day, when I went up in the airplane, and I jumped out, and I landed, and I lived, like, my brain short-circuited in the sense that now a very clear and obvious belief that I had, this is not possible, was completely debunked. So all the things now that I said to myself, this is not possible, I now had to question them. Like, I can be wrong about things I think are not possible. And that shows up time and time again. Even though I learned this at 18 years old, I didn't realize it until many years later, what actually happened when I did that first skydive. And that's the thing, it doesn't have to be a skydive, it can be anything that we think is not possible. We get to the point where we employ courage, and then we have some kind of result that teaches us something new. Does that make sense? Go ahead.
So do you think that you had to go through that, something that you thought was not possible in order to overcome future fears? Like, so do you think it's possible to overcome fears if you haven't overcome one that you didn't think was possible?
It's a good question. It's a very good question. I think, and that speaks to the sort of what I would leave you with tonight, is that first, I think yes, because that mindset of what I think is not possible might be possible. Because again, it's not like every time we do something we're afraid of, we get the awesome result. Yay! The lady jumped out and she caught her jacks and she landed and she's happy, right? But she might have not gotten the jacks and landed and been bummed out. I didn't get the hamburger, you know what I mean? So it's not to imply that it all turns out perfectly, right? But where it goes, and this is one of my favorite quotes, is a bird sitting on a tree branch is never afraid of the branch breaking because its trust is not in the branch, but in its own wings. So that speaks to what you're saying, Monica, Monica, by going over time through iteration. So for me, that idea of being brave as something that I value, like I center my success around my bravery, around my willingness to act and be courageous, so that no matter what happens, whether I get the job, whether I look cool or look stupid, like even tonight, I used to be super scared to public speak, you know? But every time I would go and do it, like I'm starting to learn to dance, for example. I'm not good at dancing, by the way. But I feel social anxiety, like, oh, I want to be cool, I want to make friends. But I go, and I'm like, my success is around the bravery. I don't go every time. Sometimes I'm like, you're allowed to have a break. You don't have to always be freaking courage girl. right? You know, so there's balance too. So I'm not saying this, I certainly allow for that, but this quote speaks to that I do believe it gets easier and easier as we iterate. So, and I say that in terms of overcoming fear, aka doing the skill work around mindset. That's where the life coaching stuff comes in. How do I reframe a thought? Well, we learn how to do that. We talk about what are your limiting thoughts. We don't even know what they are. They're often in our blind spots. You know, we have to figure out, well, where are they? Pick them apart. And I feel this way about this thing, and I wonder what you're thinking about that. So there's a whole process around this. There's a whole skill set around it that I believe everybody can learn. So yeah, I do think it gets easier over time, but I don't think it's easy per se. I do think it's a process and a skill set to lean into. You know, does that make sense? Fair? Anyone else? Mary?
How do you define like the different kinds of adrenaline and apply it to the skydiving and to the
Adrenaline. I feel like it's all the same because I feel like fear is a pretty common, ubiquitous feeling for people, and it's interesting. You know Mel Robbins? Have you heard of Mel Robbins? She's a public speaker. She talks about, she has this 5-second rule thing. She's great. One thing I love about the way she reframes fear is fear and excitement feel similarly. It's just the perspective we put on it. Like, ooh, I'm excited. I get the chance to have this experience. So I mean, I don't think it's that different. That's my take on it. I think if you're talking about fear when you're engaging like a toxic person or some toxic situation, that fear I think feels differently, but that's different. That's more of like engaging negativity and toxicity, which is I think a different animal than like positively centered, growing type goals, values aligned goals. Does that make sense?
I think the fear is also different when other people are involved.
Sure.
If it's not just you alone, it's a different kind of bravery that you have when you think, oh, she's baseball, and mom who's 90 years old.
Yep.
That adds to the complications.
Yeah, I think it's like you said, it's more complex. So whether the feeling is different, I don't know. I mean, I don't know how you feel in that scenario. I know how I've felt in different things that I've done, and maybe fear is magnified in those scenarios because you care so deeply about those relationships, which would make sense, it happens for me too. You know, does it feel differently? I don't know. I'm not sure. Yeah? Anyone else?
I think there's different levels of the fear of the adrenaline. Like the moment I walk out of the airplane or run
And so mitigating the fear, like this is, it depends, right? Like what is it that we need to take the action? So when I was in Vermont and I moved to Vermont, basically I got divorced, and this is a personal part of my story, but I was getting back out there and I was nervous, super socially nervous. This is a while ago now. But like I had to take certain steps in order to go to these like social events. And I had to like basically say, give myself parameters, like you can go 15 minutes and leave. I told my online audience, guys, I'm going to this event tonight. Not any like major deep share about, I'm so scared, none of that, because I was in it. But I gave myself accountability to like support me to take this action because I believed it would build into me feeling less scared every time I went. Right? The more I made friends, the more that I, got out there and met people, the more that I survived going to a social event, that type of thing. So like the iteration is a big part, but setting ourselves up for that success and giving ourselves those outs where we need it when we feel that significant charge. You know what I mean? Because that's the thing, like we don't want to go and feel like completely off of our rocker. Like that's not what we want to necessarily experience. So it's different for everybody. But yeah, one thing I'll say, just because I think this is useful for when we're trying to employ courage, is this idea of throwing your hat over the fence. Have you ever heard that idea? Where you do something where you can't take it back. You have to then do the thing that you're afraid to do. So if you throw your hat over the fence, you theoretically have to climb over the fence to get the hat back. You know what I mean?
Another way I've heard definition for fear and courage is fear is feeling the fear, courage is feeling the fear and still going for it.
Mm-hmm.
And jumping. Like
Yeah.
To me that makes a hero's journey.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's not always that person is going to win, but at least that person has conquered fear.
And that's the thing too.
And got out of his own way.
I think most people still feel the fear. In almost every single part of my path, I feel the fear. So it's not about, oh, we're going to exceptionally, perfectly get rid of all the feelings. I think people really think that that's the goal, and I would never say that's the goal. I would say it's the goal to minimize it as much as we can, and then to employ courage, as we said.
Because otherwise it becomes unachievable.
Well, then you're never going to do anything.
Because regardless of what age, the fear doesn't leave it. It's a matter of you learning to either go through it or dwell in it and say, I have it, and limit it.
And yeah, and I'm not everybody. Some people might really not feel it, and that'd be great. I love that for them.
Really?
So I don't know.
I would like to meet such a person.
Well, yeah, and that's the thing. But I always stand in, this is my experience, but I don't know the experience of others, because some people might have really done public speaking so much that they get up on a stage and they really don't feel fear anymore.
But
I
have
believe
other
that's
kinds of
possible
fear,
too.
no?
I don't know. I'm not that.
Generalizing
It's
it.
possible, but I do believe that some people do public speaking so much that they don't think about it
Yeah.
twice. I hated public speaking, and I was terrified of public speaking, even though I am a talker and I talk to groups. Just standing in front of a group. Yeah, I talk too much, yes.
Stand up. Stand up and do
I can stand up, but this is not my talk. So standing in front of a group, standing there and speaking terrified me, and I would forget what I had to say, and I would just freeze, and then that would be even worse. And so 2 years ago, a friend of mine was running a conference, and she told me, you're going to be a speaker. And I said, no way. And she said, yes, and you're not getting out of this. And she didn't take no for an answer, and she made me speak at this event. Well, I paid for it too, but she made me speak at this event. And the one thing that helped me break that barrier and break that fear was, one, I can't let my friend down. She's committed me, so now I'm committed, and I have to speak for her, and I have to make this good. And once I started writing my talk,
I started really feeling the passion in it, and I think that fear kind of melted away. I did take a sheet of paper with me as a safety net, but once I did that talk, somebody came up to me after the talk and invited me to do the same talk at another event.
Yeah.
And after that, it was kind of like your first skydive. After that, it was like, wow, I thought I could never do this. Now I can, and now I actually jump at opportunities to speak at events, which blows my mind every time. Like, I can't believe that I never thought, 2 years ago, I never thought that I would say, I'll speak at that event.
What's awesome, it speaks to the mindset shift, from taking action to doing it. It speaks to the prep, right? You didn't just not prep, you prepped, and in that your fear dissolved a bit, and then you were more ready. And so then you had a probably better experience in your delivery, which I'm sure there are plenty of people. I mean, I love comedy. Have you ever seen the documentary Dying Laughing?
No.
It's hilarious because they talk about all the times they bombed. And it's so funny, but it also speaks volumes of what they've gone through to hone their craft. You know, so it isn't all roses. I once spoke at a environmental data company in Boston. Holy crap, guys. It was a tough audience. Talk about, I laugh at that because I feel like that is my quintessential bomb story. Like, everything I said was good, but the reception, less than so. Barb, you had something?
Yeah, question. So going back to your story about...
Yeah, I'm going to put up my... Thank you. Boom. Q&A, just in case you guys... And that's my podcast, but go ahead, Barb.
Going back to your becoming a life coach and you checked with your friend. If that friend had come back and said, nah, it wasn't so great.
Yeah.
What do you think your next steps would be?
Great question. I think it would have been more... I think it would have made a big difference. If she had said that this life coaching stuff is bullcrap, I think it would have had a major influence on my decision because I was so nervous that it was BS. I probably, given the intuitive pull, who knows what I would have done, but I probably would have continued to research because I was so intuitively pulled. But yeah, I'm sure it would have had an impact, and I'm grateful she came and said it was awesome because it was equally awesome for me. So I don't even want to think about that because I'm so thankful that I went the direction of life coaching in my career.
Well, I ask it because you don't always get the positive reinforcement around you, right? So I'm just thinking about...
More negative
and maybe to follow on from that, from your comment then, how do you give the space to allow so that you can hear your intuition?
Good question also. I think to think about and remember that your intuition is always there. It's I think a skill set in itself to learn to distinguish whether it's fear talking and whether it's intuition talking. Because our intuition can equally tell us, cross the street. Across the street, there's a guy, or whatever, some threatening character. That's a legitimate experience I've had also. Across the street, that's something I now very much listen to. You know what I mean? So I would first tell people the idea that they to look for intuition, to basically keep their mind aware that it's going to be talking to you in all scenarios. You know what I mean? And to start to lean into the conscious looking at, is this intuition, is this fear? Because, how many of you have had that question mark where you're like, is this intuition or is this, right? So I think it takes iteration too. But I think for new people who don't have a lot of experience really trying to connect to their intuition, I would have them pause and really slow down, clear away just get outside influences away and just create some kind of space where they can breathe and really rest and stop and see, do the gut check. I don't know if that makes sense, but...
That was actually
gonna be my question, is
Yeah.
jumping off of yours, how do you tell the difference between fear and gut check? Because you could have also gone into it and found out it was complete bullshit.
Totally.
And said, why didn't I listen to my gut?
Yep.
Right? Because my gut was saying, this is shit.
And I've had plenty of experiences like that too. And I think part of it is trial and error, you know, because we can't ever know for sure. You know, we can't ever know for
We still
sure.
have to take a chance.
Yeah. I mean, and that's the thing, like, so how do I get through it and still take action? Even though I know at every choice, I can't be certain. I never can be certain, because the future is unknown. And that's
You
okay.
can still pull something from
Right.
that experience. There's probably something in there,
Yeah.
right? That, oh, this didn't really feel like raging success on the outside. But
Yeah.
there's something to learn that
Right.
you build on that's typically my
It's not
experience.
that
Is part of the reason why I did it, right?
Yeah.
But you go into it thinking, oh, I needed this little nugget of information that I wasn't going to learn any other way.
Yeah.
Sometimes you never assess it.
Well, and I guess you have to be willing to pivot, right?
Yeah.
So if
Yeah.
you went into it and you found out like, ooh, this doesn't
Yeah.
work. And that's hard, right? Because you already told everyone this is what I'm doing,
Yeah.
right? You
Oh,
said
yeah.
this is what I'm doing, and you jumped, right? And then you're like, oh my God. Like,
Yeah.
So, but you have to be willing to pivot and say, all right, what I learned from
Resilient.
that.
You know?
Yeah.
I was going to say from a risk perspective, you're looking at, okay, what do I have behind this? So if you're trying something, I'm talking about like going in a different direction. So is it something you really believe in? Is it something you can sell to other people? Are you helping other people? Like, what is it that's taking you there? Like, get down to the bottom of that. Like, okay, even though people aren't familiar with this, it's something new. They might not believe in it. You have to, I believe.
Yeah, and that calls to the values, like identifying our values, which we didn't talk about today. Like, how can I identify a choice to make or whatever? Is that part of it is identifying and doing the work to say, what do I care about? What values are important to me? Knowing and being committed to choosing from those values once we have clarity around those, that's a way to at least have a little bit more, like, logical knowledge behind a gut check, right? And it's like, because I know that, well, this is the thing, like if courage is a value of mine or bravery is a value of mine, I can feel good just going for it with no other check. Because I always have that out, like, oh, well, I was courageous, go me, right? Right? So I can always feel good about myself, I've got that positivity.
Still makes for a good story.
Yeah, makes for a good story, comedy, right? That's a big value of mine. But like to sort of know, and it's like, it shows itself through my story, like as a young person, like for example, skydiving, why I never was like a world champion. Like I did competitive four-way and I grew in the sport and I had competitive success, but I never went to like the world meet as the like USA team because my values showed themselves in my choices in that I actually cared more about learning different styles of flying so that I could fly with more of my friends. And so I ended up flying and doing like a vertical style of flying. And those are the world records that I helped organize. But like, so the flat flying, sort of weird, but the flat flying is the way I started. And then I started learning stuff where you fly upside down, head down, and upright in like a sit flying position. But the reason I went after that is because I wanted to be able to jump with my friends. I wanted to be able to coach and participate in whatever jumps that other people and give back in multiple ways. So that, as a result, I then became a professional. Why I was asked to go around the world so much is that I could coach in multiple disciplines. I could coach in belly flying, I could coach in free flying, and I could coach flying parachutes. And so that was unique. And it was because I wanted to be with, I loved everybody. So people screamed as a value, connection, right? Meaningful relationships. So that's underpinned everything, and those are the choices that then allowed me to help discern my gut going forward. It's just another example. Does that make sense? Yeah.
I think it also goes back to having no regrets. Where are you going to regret it if you took big risks in life because I thought to myself, if I don't do this, if I do this and it doesn't work out, at least I tried. If I don't do this, I'm probably going to regret it, that I didn't even give it a shot.
One of the most powerful quotes I've heard is, regret is one of the most powerful things because you don't feel it yet, or one of the most dangerous things because you don't feel it yet. So it calls us to bring that consciousness to our choices now. And that's the thing, it's like, where am I not living life to the fullest that I maybe would want to more? What is really working for me that I would want to either keep doing as is, or maybe do more of because it would increase my level of fulfillment because I do more of it. Cool? Anything else, guys?
Last question.
Yeah, last question. Go ahead.
So I just want to say thank you. Because I think I'm in my 20s, and I think the 20s are hard when you major in something, and then you find out you go to that career, and you realize maybe this isn't for me. Maybe this isn't, and I majored in public relations. I love studying it, but I'm not a content creative person. I'm not a copywriter. And it's hard, when you realize my last role was a lot of content creative, and it's one of these things where my fear was disappointment to my manager, because it's one of these things where, well, I don't want to say I went to school to do something and then not be good at that. And that's what I wanted to say. I think this talk is so great for someone who's in their 20s, trying to figure out what they're going to do with their career and how they're going to pivot from one thing and not be so scared to just jump to another type of role. So I've learned that there are many different styles of marketing and relations and communication. I may not have excelled in one, but I used to hear my intuition. I knew that early on after getting the job and holding it for, I think it was 8 months into it where I was like, yeah, I don't think
It takes courage to listen to our intuition when we hear it as well.
And
It really
that's why
does.
I love hearing from all of you your stories, because I don't feel so alone knowing that it's okay to feel this way. Because I feel like sometimes people don't talk about that. I talk to, my fiance's parents have been working in the same role for over 25 years. And one's not happy, but they call it the golden handcuffs. And then there's another one where they love what they do, and it's a routine, and that's like, well, I don't want to disappoint them because this is the way, this is how they've done it, this is how they, and so it's like one of these things where it's like, okay, to be like, I'm not going to work at this company my entire life, or, so that's how these things.
No,
That's
and
not,
it's a mistake these days.
it's not a reality.
If you have more than 10 years at the company, people look at your resume with doubt, like, what's wrong?
Well, that's why I like
Earlier it was like an attribute, like this person is so loyal.
And then,
Yeah.
because we were talking about taking the negative thoughts away and really staying alone and figuring out like soul searching pretty much. Because I feel like you're saying, like, in these days we can't do that. Where I'm listening to my mother and the older generation of my parents saying, well, how are you going to provide for your future family? How are you going to do this if you don't follow this structure?
You're going to do it by getting varied experiences along the way, because it's your collection of things that you touched during life that make your experience unique.
And they
And
have
they
to
make you different than somebody else. And then that's what the companies will value, because you bring something to the table no one else does.
I just wanted to add to that regret comment. If it is any helpful for me to share my experience, I am a cancer survivor, 30 days to live, and here I am, 8 years. That regret thing is so true. When you are lying in your deathbed, counting days on the calendar, that is what comes to your consciousness. So right now we're talking about such an inspiring story, like taking action. Yes, you're going to fail, but be prepared to fail and go for it.
There's plenty of failures. There's plenty of times I was on my face, metaphorically and literally, in my skydiving career too.
There is a word I think I heard, fail forward.
Yeah.
So every time you fall, get up, keep moving. Get up, keep moving. But regret thing is so true. Please, if there is one thing I can bring back from my experience, that would be life, live regret-free. Even if you might come across like the most, rebellious or out-of-box person in your family, it's okay. At the end of the day, you are going to die alone. That's all I can say, right? It doesn't matter what your mom said, what your kids said, what your husband said, because at the end of the day, it's only you.
Dead alone,